Welcome to Don't Get Rusty, another monthly webinar from AOPA's You Can Fly division, a monthly series. So with us today, we've got Steven in the background. He's going to be he's our producer. He'll be running the back end stuff. He'll be answering some of your questions. I'll be answering some of the other ones as we go. Steven, say hello, Steven.
Hello, Steven.
We've also got Chris Moser that'll be with us, your usual CFI. Chris.
Hi, how you doing, everybody? Glad to be here.
And our guest today, Steve Bateman. So Steve Bateman is a AOPA staff. He'll try to talk you down that he's just a flying club guy, but Steve, talk yourself up, buddy. You are the man. You are here joining us.
Chief Flying Clubs Officer. There you go.
That's
Hello, everyone.
Exactly right.
CFCO.
That's right. And so he'll introduce himself in a minute. So right now, let's look at the right-hand bar. So everybody on GoToWebinar should have a bar on the right side that is your home base for everything. So on this right side, you've got your mute button, which you can't change anyway. You should have an area for handouts. You'll have a section for questions. That's where you're going to ask your questions, so please ask them there. And like I said before, we'll be answering them as we go, and then some of them will actually be asked on the show, so you might get your question asked. As always, there is Wings credit available for this course, and also we are recording it, and it will show up on the AOPA.org and YouTube channels. So look for the most popular
Pablo, which
webinar.
email would you be using?
Well, that's a great question.
Pablo, which email would you be using for that?
You're going to be using the one that you originally submitted to us for that. Okay, Steve, welcome to the show. You want to introduce yourself and then kick us off?
Yeah, you're going. So I guess I've missed this slide then already. So that's not
we
doing
did
very
Chris,
well, is it?
Yeah, well, let's get to Chris then. Chris, let's give yourself an introduction.
Okay, so I am a CFI and I'm AOPA Senior Director for Flight Training Education. So I work with schools and CFIs, and I'm here every month with you. So looking forward to this. Pablo?
Yeah, so Senior Director of Flight Training Technology, as the slide says, and I am the tech guy for You Can Fly, and so specifically working on a wonderful app that you might have seen at Redbird Migration, and doing all the other technical needs within You Can Fly. And Stephen, this will lead us to your intro finally.
Stephen or Steve?
Sorry.
Really
Steve, sorry. There's two of you and I'm so not used to it.
Stephen's in the other room.
He's back here.
So hello, everyone. I'm Steve Bateman. I'm also a CFI. I'm the director of the Flying Clubs Initiative. My team and I, Drew Myers and I, we help start flying clubs and we help keep them healthy. So far to date, we've helped start 162 flying clubs. You think about what that means with pilots and airplanes, and you know, even in a pandemic year, we've helped start 26, which is not bad for a pandemic year when you think about it.
Not bad at all. Nice job.
Thanks.
So what are we talking about today, Steve?
Well, great intro there, Chris. Thanks. We're going to be actually talking about do we go or do we not? Do we continue or do we not? These are two major decisions in life that, literally in life, that can affect a flight. So very timely. I found this just the other day, November the 8th, as you can see. The pilot took off in the dark from a private runway in heavy fog and moments later collided into the side of an adjacent hill. The pilot was declared dead at the scene due to injuries sustained in the crash. What do you think then, guys?
Well, it sounds like the usual story, right?
Yeah.
Not taking into account where you're at, your conditions, and probably a matter of that get-the-rightus that we'll be talking about later.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it could have been mechanical, right? I mean, who knows?
Sure.
You take in fog and have a mechanical problem. There's not much chance that you're going to come out of that very well. But ultimately, Chris, what do you think? Pilot's decision?
I would think so, because taking off into those kind of low-vis conditions, I mean, how are you going to come back and land if you have a problem? So that and probably spatial disorientation. I mean, you just cannot see in that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that gets us to some of the things we'll be talking about in a bit as well. Regulations. We know it's Part 91. We could, right? We could do that. Take off in those sorts of conditions. Not being able to get back. My goodness, that's pushing it a little bit. Okay, yeah. So one of so that's sort of looking at the consequences, I suppose. So what I really want to do, we want to talk about tools, but I want to make it more than just weather tools. There's regulatory tools, there's decision-making tools that can help us. There's, you know, how are we feeling today, our own risk, learn from the mistake of others. We'll take a sneak, just a peek at what other people have done before us to really help us understand what we don't want to do. We'll look at some pre-flight tools, some in-flight tools, and then some post-flight stuff. So that's the general outline. Ready to go?
Yes, sir. Let's
do it.
So we're just going to fire up and take a look, right?
Yes, sir.
Off we go. So, so what do you think the best tool is for handling any in-flight situation?
I think it's your brain, but you know, what do you think?
I like brain. Brain is good. Yeah, emergency checklist. I don't know.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at here is the best way to handle any in-flight situation is probably not to get in it. And so a really good tool is the pre-flight. So understanding the role of the pre-flight and all of that is I think the foundation for all of this. Now, you know, the other thing we got to think about here is, are we able to make the decision? So this comes down to our ability right now to make the decision. So what's your groove? I mean, type A, recognition seeker, best pilot ever. Well, we're all of those, all of us. We're pilots. We know some taken. Yeah, there you go. Who said that?
We all did.
Yeah, there you go. But it sort of comes down to personality types in a way as well. I don't know if you've ever taken any of those personality evaluations. Briggs-Myers is one. You've got this sort of mixture, introvert on one side, extrovert on the other, and you know all of those. But you know, how are you positioned? Not just sort of now in this situation, but how are you in general positioned to making good decisions? And then there is the risk tolerance and the bias as of right now. This gets into those 5 hazardous attitudes. Remember those? We all did them when we studied our private pilot's knowledge test. There's some good ones in there. What do you think that chap did, the flight we just looked at, the taking off in fog? What hazardous attitudes do you think he exhibited?
God, so many.
Chris
is dying. Go, Chris.
5. Yeah.
Could be maybe the invulnerability, because you know, the idea that nothing will happen, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like the engine's not going to quit or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
so invulnerability there, certainly probably a bit macho, right? Just maybe there was a reason for doing it. Who knows? Maybe there were some pressures, but sad nevertheless. Always good to think about how these attitudes affect you and how they affect you today. And then this whole business of taking off in a single engine aircraft in below IFR minimum conditions is, and fill in your own gaps there. We hear it happen all the time, and then I think probably the worst sin is when people boast about it. A couple of books here that you can look at. It's in the handout, by the way. These slides are in the handout. There's one called The Killing Zone: How and Why Pilots Die. I mean, it happens, and we have to face it, and we need to read about it and understand it. On the back of that book is a really interesting little discussion on personalities, on pilot personalities. And I don't think you'll be surprised, but it's surprising. Then there's redefining airmanship as well. So the other part of this is, you know, there's a regulatory obligation on us. Know all there is. Isn't that a fantastic regulation? Whoever wrote that is just amazing. Just within a few words, you have to know all there is to know about this flight.
Well, that way we lower the bar for everybody to be all inclusive for everyone. It's just all you got to know is everything.
It truly is. So one of the things that 91103 tells us is about weather. So we're going to run a poll to see what you think, and don't look it up, what you think 91103 tells us. What is our obligation under the regulations for weather? Run the polls.
Right. There we go. Let's see what we got here. So it's talking about, is it weather forecast? Might it be reports and forecasts? Official briefing? In-flight weather?
This is a hard one for us.
Yeah, there's a lot of
fives.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tricky. How are we doing on the poll there?
We're doing good. 12% voted. So let's just wait another second.
Yep. Let them chime in here.
Yeah.
See a trend beginning though, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. It looks like the vote. It looks like it's maybe turning a little bit here.
Oh, I see that.
Oh,
this is
yeah.
that's like a late lead here.
Yeah,
That's right.
depending on how it happens, I might want to recount now. So just
Exactly. By hand, please, Stephen, if you would.
Get
All right,
right
91
on.
middle screen.
we
All right.
anyone
Numbers
see
are
the,
going up, so that's pretty good. But I think it's pretty obvious at this point, right?
Yeah,
It's
I think we got
maintained
the same
that
trend here.
percentage. So, all right, let's end it, Steve. There you go.
okay, so
There it
all
is.
right, there it is. So weather reports and forecasts, yeah, well done. So you would think that, well, maybe it's just weather forecasts, what's happening in the future. An official flight briefing isn't actually required by regulation. You'd certainly probably be pinged if something happens and you haven't taken one. I mean, this is that whole thing of regulations versus, it's like regulations versus the aim. It's that sort of distinction.
Plus the
I
lawyers. I believe that one's for the lawyers as well.
Well, but I wonder, because when I first read this, I felt maybe that you were talking about this, but by saying an official flight briefing, to me that also meant like if I go into my EFB that's hooked up to the whatever system, that marks that I've checked weather.
Yeah. So we'll talk about official weather in a little bit. But what I was getting at there was you have spoken to somebody or you have gone on to the flight service website and have absolutely gotten and received, maybe understood a flight briefing. So the idea there is, yeah, it's interesting that none of those are regulatory except weather reports what's happening now and weather forecasts what's predicted to happen in the future. So yeah, that's a good one. Another good thing for us to understand our capability is Pave. And as I say to people, I hope you bathe before flight, but do you pave before flight? It truly is a really good all-in-one check here, but it actually only works if you're honest. It's one of those things that you can really blow off quite quickly unless you take the time and be honest about it. So which one of those is important for our discussion here, do you think?
That little V is sticking out to me.
Yeah, yeah, there's a V there.
Of course, they're all important. Yeah, but for today, since it's weather.
Yeah, for today it's weather, and that's of course the environment, and that covers not just weather. There's a whole number of other things as well. Perhaps the environment you should take a quick look at terrain, particularly if the weather is not as good as you think it is, and terrain is going to become really important really quickly. So there's lots of other things that you can be doing there. And of course, if out of this you're asking, well, perhaps I shouldn't go, then well, maybe the decision's made. Perhaps I shouldn't continue. That's even more pressure, that one. So
real quick, if I may, the other thing too is when you said terrain, it reminded me that here where I live in the Midwest, it's terrain, we're at 750 feet. Pretty much, I can go pretty much anywhere and not break 1,000 feet, right? So there's very little gain in altitude, so it's not an issue for me. But I don't have to look at terrain specifically if I'm going northwest, because there are 2,000 to 3,000 foot antennas out there.
Right.
So I'd like to add, don't be fooled by I'm in a flat, area. That's the areas that have the big antennas too. So just wanted to mention that. There's one in particular that it's always, every time I get in a plane, even go close to that direction, I'm always like, all right, where is it? Sorry, just had to add that.
And it's like a trap there as well, because if you are caught in weather and if you start getting lower and lower, those things are difficult to see at the best of times, but in poor visibility conditions. I'm sort of pleased to see that charts and chart supplements are going to be updated on a better and a quicker cadence now, because these things pop up.
Yes, they do.
All the time. So keeping an eye on what's going on the chart or on your EFB. Have you ever had that, obstruction or terrain? If you ever had that one beep at you and you're looking around, you're in flat land, but then suddenly,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, there's an antenna.
Steve, can you possibly just define Pave, please, just real quick?
Yeah, what are the four?
Yeah. So we got a number there, right? We've got pilot U. And typically what we do is then move quickly from P into I'm safe. That's a good one to do. That's the I'm safe checklist. Then you've got the airplane, the condition of the airplane. Typically we take account of that with the pre-flight. But again, the pre-flight is only as good as you want it to be. Somebody said to me one time, I always consider the aircraft to be unworthy, and it has to prove to me that it's airworthy as I do the pre-flight. That's a good one, not a bad one for our go no go decision either. Then we got the environment, as we talked about, and then external pressures, and that's certainly where that can get you. It's everything that's pushing you to make the go decision. It's the external factors that could be driving you. So that's why I say if you're asking, maybe I shouldn't go, then perhaps you really shouldn't. So what we need is Siri to tell us what to do. So hey Siri, should I go or not? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Here's what I found on the web. Sorry.
That's what happened when we did this for practice. That's exactly what happens. So we need another tool. So we're gonna make up our tool here. It's called a go-ometer. We're gonna put our complete faith in this go-ometer. And my question to you is, when we're sitting there making this decision, is it 50-50? Are we always saying, well, I could or I couldn't?
I'd say most people are probably favoring that go.
Yeah,
That's,
they want to go.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that bottom one there. I think we're well biased towards going. So probably the same thing's going to happen when we're continuing. I think it's even worse when you're in flight. You've made the decision to go. You've got people in the back seats perhaps, or somebody's waiting for you, and things are beginning to go south a little bit. To make that do I continue discussion is even trickier. So
I'll tell you that go no go. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, just one thing I'd throw in here too is one way to help delineate your go meter too is using a personal minimums checklist like the Air Safety Institute has to help you delineate that and to try to avoid that stuff.
Yeah,
anyway, go ahead.
I think that's a really good point. And the thing with personal checklists, you have to realize, even though there's the word personal in, they're not actually yours. If you think about a personal checklist, you need to think about it as belonging to your loved ones, not to you.
Absolutely.
Pablo, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is a good one because most of us, like I said, lean towards go, and I know that I've been there because I'll admit, 90% of my trips are over 3.5 hours. Right, it's 600, 700, 800, 1,000 miles. And so, what falls into my thinking, and I've caught myself several times, is the weather's okay here. I could probably scud run because I know that an hour from here and the rest of my trip is clear. So that starts to seep in, like, dude, if I can just get out of this, I'm fine. You know what I mean? And that's obviously something that's like, well, okay, let's just wait.
Yeah.
Right? So you're walking that way, and then you walk yourself back and go, don't be an ass.
Yeah, so, scud running, as we all know, is getting lower and lower as the clouds are getting lower. That's actually one of the times you need to be looking on your sectional and looking for the MEF. Remember that thing, the maximum elevation figure? That gives you at least a clue, and the Oroka on the low altitude IFR chart as well. These things are there definitely to help you. So I suggest we turn it around. And be biased towards no-go. And still there's the devil pushing you, right? Pushing you. When you're in flight, your immediate action should be, I think I need to stop, but let's now review some of the situations that may allow me to continue. One of the things I always carry with me on long cross countries is a tent and enough food for 2 to 3 days. And I'm talking about, halfway across the country type of cross countries, but anytime where you're likely to come into very different weather situations, and truly you don't have to go too far when you think about it to come under different types of weather situations, particularly if you're going over the hills or by lakes or whatever. So I find that having the tent really makes my decision quite easy. Well, I don't have to worry about getting a car or finding a hotel or whatever. I just have a tent. Yes, I know people are going to say, well, what if it's snowing, and what if it's freezing, what if it's raining? But in general, that's a really nice tool to help you with that sort of decision. So tools to help with decision making. Other tools, the FAA has spent a lot of time on this. We have the Risk Management Handbook. I don't know if you've read it, and not many people have. I think it's worth a read. It's one of those things you should read at least once. There's some other references down there as well, aeronautical decision making. It really is a thing. And if you remember ADM, a systematic approach to the mental process of, it's trying to organize our mental processes rather than just making those snap discussions or decisions. Then there's the FRATs, flight risk assessment tools. These were really hot a couple of years ago, but they seem to have gone a little cooler now, and I think probably because people were using them as crutches. Tell me what to do. You know, this tool is useless. It doesn't tell me what to do. No, it gives you an assessment. It gives you some ideas. It gives you a framework. Any thoughts on that, Chris? Did you use these when you were freighting?
When I was freighting, we just had minimums for the company, so we didn't have a flight risk assessment tool, which is, for the folks that may not know, that's a sort of a thing where you check off how many hours have I flown recently, that sort of thing. It gives you points to tell you where's your risk level. But one thing I would say here too that really occurred to me as you were talking about this, Steve, is during our emergency webinar that we talked about, I talked a lot about the way that we train is the way that we'll handle ourselves when we're in the moment or when something happens. And it's the same thing here. It's almost training yourself for how to make decisions. So sometimes it seems silly, you're going through the decide model, like I don't make decisions like that, but it is when you're under pressure, you can fall back on, there's this system that I can follow to help me organize it. And I agree that it's a very important thing for us to learn and to be conservative. That's the biggest thing I learned flying freight, was to teach myself, to force myself to be conservative, because I got myself in situations a couple of times and it wasn't fun, and I'm glad I'm out of them.
Yeah, I mean, checklists, any sort of checklist is good, isn't it? Because we have a systematic approach, and decide is a checklist, as are, you know, a lot of the others. It also allows us to tackle some of those 5 hazardous attitudes. It slows us down. We're not going to be impulsive. We're going to actually follow something that we've either trained for or we're reading about. So I think that's all good stuff. So, you know, decision making. Decision making comes at a cost. It comes as a consequence, right?
Exactly, very much so.
So let's just look at that a little bit. You know, if you haven't seen it yet, folks, the 29th and the 30th NAL reports are available on the AOPA Air Safety Institute website, and it's all digital now. I mean, you can save it as a PDF and print it out and so on, but it's all online. And the reason it's online is as information comes in for any particular year. If you look here, we're looking at 2018, but information about these accidents is still becoming available. As that information is available, the ASI team update the digital tool, and it's right there. It gives us that information without having to sort of republish anything. So we've seen this chart. This is the non-commercial fixed wing accident trends, and the sad thing about it is it's pretty flat.
Yeah, especially with all the work we've done. It's crazy. Like, it's the same. Unfortunately, we've gotten it down way low with reliability of mechanic and our systems, but we got to change the person here, right?
Yeah, that's right. So if we actually look and see what our contribution to this is, we the pilot, being pilot related, it's stayed at around 70% for you know, a decade. So we still are 70% of the cause, and then there's other things like mechanical and so on and so on. But if we look at the type of accidents, the type of pilot related accidents then that we were talking about, look at that one.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's got to be the largest percentage of all those, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the largest it's been for quite a while too. So again, put this into context. If you are involved in a accident and it's pilot related, and if it is due to weather, and we'll dissect that in a minute, there's a 91% chance of it being fatal. Ooh, yeah. So choose your accidents wisely is what I say there. Go with other. If you're gonna have an accident, go with other there. It's more survivable. So so if we dig into that, the types of weather accidents, you'll see a couple of big ones here. You've got VFR into IMC. So people get into that situation as classically scud running, and then you haven't anything left, and you end up going into it 93%, and then poor IFR technique. So again, this is if you are involved in an accident and it is a weather accident and it is a VFR into IMC accident, there's a 93% fatality rate. So this is why we're doing this. This is why we study these things. This is why we do it. So good flights. Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick, just on that last part too, is one thing to really remember is that spatial disorientation, if you've never had it, comes on so quickly. It slams into you. I had it happen. I'm an instrument instructor, and I was teaching an instrument over the desert at night, and we happened to turn outbound, and there was a road that was kind of with cars on it that was sort of not on the horizon. It was sort of angular, and I immediately got disoriented, and I had to look over at the instrument. So that's why this, if you look at those, why it's so deadly. It's spatial disorientation is very powerful and very fast. And you just
and let's poke at that a little bit more, because another question might come in. Well, what if you're instrument rated?
Right.
Yep.
And even with that, it's like
For your first accident one, that question came in, was that pilot instrument rated?
So if you think about it, again, if you're involved in an accident and it's a weather accident and it involves VFR into IMC, if you're involved in that accident, there's a 93% fatality. But if you're instrument rated, then there's a current, right? There's a strong chance that you're not even going to get involved in the accident, so you're not going to get recorded as a statistic here. So it's not saying that every time you fly into it, there's a 93%. Now, under these situations, the best defense, without doubt, get an instrument rating and stay current, and get on the instruments as soon as you can. As soon as you're in any situation like that, even black hole situations, especially black hole situations, you're taking off late, it's dark, you don't have any visual references. Even in day, or it can't be day at night, but at night VFR conditions, you need to think about being on instruments. And I always go to the attitude indicator. I can see everything I need.
Yeah, now two things, sorry to interrupt. Two things. One is people are asking about the graph and the terms with it and what this means. So someone's saying, are there less accidents because we're flying less? What does accidents mean? And well, I'll go with those two to start. Yeah,
so you can dig a lot more into this in the null report. I've just extracted some here, and for the really just to sort of lead us through what we're doing in this webinar. But if you look at the null report, it goes into a lot more details. One of the things they do there is they normalize it. So rather than just saying absolute flights, it's accidents per 100,000 hours, and so they look at the rates and they look at how the rates change. We've been flying more and more in GA for quite a few years, and even this year is quite a lot of flights are taking place. So normalizing it like that is the best way of doing it. So I refer people to the null reports. There's great commentary there. It's not just the graph. There's a lot of really good descriptions there about what's going on. So what is your first pre-flight weather action? If we're going to be doing a pre-flight, what do we do?
Pablo?
Oh, thank you, Chris. Yeah, well, personally, I'd check the weather. I mean, that's, and that generally means I'm checking something like a local weather site. I don't even start with aviation stuff. And then I continue onward. I go to my destination, and then I go in between. So I'm weather related, app related, and browser somehow.
Chris, what do you do?
And for me, what I do is I tend to start with, I use an EFB, electronic flight bag, the app. And so I'll start looking a couple days before my flight at just the thing called the MOS, which is sort of like an extended TAF, sort of. It's not an official source, whatever, but I like to start with that. And then once I get closer, I start looking at the TAFs and the METARs, and then of course the morning of. But yeah, I want to know just kind of what's going on in my area. And I know, Pablo, you tend to fly longer distances. I tend to do mostly instruction, so I'm usually just in the same area, which is probably maybe some of the difference between what we do. But it sounds like we both look ahead of time.
Well, Chris, thank you for that distinction. You're absolutely right.
So what I usually do is look outside.
Oh, sure. You don't even go with technology. You use your own technology.
He probably has a weather rock.
But this is important, right? It's very easy to sort of put our heads into the electronic flight bags and look at all the graphs and loop the radar and all of that good stuff. But both when we're on the ground and when we're in the air, our eyeballs tell us a huge amount of information. I mean, after all, we're looking outside and we're saying we are determining, is it different from what it said on that app? So being able to look outside, discern the weather. If it's fogged in, as it often gets at different times of the year here in Frederick, but the go no go decision is even made. We don't even have to worry about it for a while. We can perhaps be taking a little bit more time and effort on our pre-flight by looking at some of these tools. So there's numerous things that we can do. We're looking for low clouds. We're looking for reduced visibility. All of these things that can hurt by mountain obscuration, CFIT type, loss of control, of course, as Chris mentioned, the spatial disorientation and so on. What we want to try and get from this is it safe, right? Is it safe? Is it going to get better or worse? Overlay your route. Most of these tools, of course, allow you to overlay your route of flight, which is different from a route. And you overlay your Come on, guys, wake up. Pablo.
I'm awake.
We'll talk about that.
I'm looking at questions and answers as well, so I'm trying to,
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
There you go.
yeah, I'm doing the whole bit. If I was asleep, you'd know it.
Thank you. So, overlay your route, and then you can get a really good idea of what's going on. But importantly, if you are making a bit of a dicey decision, have a good idea where the areas of good weather actually are. So that's always a good one.
Hey, Steve, as related to that, one of the questions did come in. Somebody says that under Part 135, an operator must use weather reports or forecasts prepared by NWS or a source approved by NWS. Is there any approved source for Part 61? And I know that we will talk about that, but I wanted to get that question out there so we could, make that distinction.
Yeah, so probably that means operating under Part 91 under the rules of 91 flight. So yeah, and it comes down to that 91.103. That's not just for IFR or anything else. It's a fairly general regulation. Of course, it's in 91. There are additional requirements if you're operating under an operator's license, and a lot of that comes under the standard operating procedures and the certification of that carrier as well. So it can get tighter. We know that, for example, with takeoff minimums. There are very different takeoff minimum requirements for a Part 135, say, than there is for a Part 90.
Oh yeah.
So read your part and definitely understand what your standard operating procedures are telling you.
And one thing that I'd like to mention there, just because I did used to fly 135, and we had higher takeoff and landing minimums than you do under 91, because 91 you can take off in 0-0 if you want to, and landing you can shoot the approach, like you can shoot the approach even if it's 0-0. You can potentially just say, oh, I'm going to go take a look. But under 135, here we are in 121 as well, there are minimums. So you have professional pilots flying every day that have restrictions on when they can start things. Yet under Part 91, we don't have a lot of that. So it's just something to consider, that if professional pilots aren't doing it, maybe we shouldn't be doing it either under 91. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's smart.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, definitely different. And I suppose there's lots of reasons. I won't get into it now, but that I could get onto a rant about flight reviews and 24 calendar months and all those sorts of things, but I won't. I'm going to be good. So what about temptation? What about temptations? I call this a tightening spiral. Imagine you're flying, things are going south. What's going through your mind? What are the temptations? What are you likely to do?
Well, definitely that idea of continue on, go take a look, right? Take a peek. Oh, maybe we can just sort of scoot under that or get around it or whatever. Just too hopeful in some terms, in some sense, I think.
Yeah, there's all of that.
I know Pablo did an entire, and I know Pablo, of course, did an entire webinar just a few months ago on this.
I did. It was a highly rated webinar from early in the season. Please refer to that one. But I had weather on both sides of it, which was incredible. One was leaving Frederick, and the other one was when I almost got to Frederick. So Frederick being the variable that remained the same there. However, yeah, no, absolutely. And one of those things was, I'm going to get there, right? Because at least on the way back, it was 3.5 hours into the trip. I'm like, I'm 20 minutes from home. Woohoo! And it's like, no, I don't want to land, but it happens,
and that's that devil on the continuometer, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, there he is pushing you to keep going. I'm nearly there, or I can always do this, or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you know what? May I add this real quick? Because I had friends in Frederick, I did text them and say, how's the weather there? I didn't just trust this, it could be 15 minutes behind. I actually typed, and they're like, it's horrible. I'm like, okay, cool. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, good point. These and these temptations, the problem with these temptations is that the deeper you get in, the less capable you become of making the decision. And for some of us who have been around a little bit, a number of years ago, there was quite a famous video called 178 Seconds to Live. Do you remember that one, guys?
Yes,
very much. I think it's still on YouTube.
It is, yeah. And for folks who haven't seen it, it's back in the days of trying to shock people into doing the right thing rather than sort of necessarily smart training and so on. And it is shocking. I mean, it is pretty interesting video. So if you haven't seen it or haven't seen it for a while, just look at 178 Seconds to Live and see that spiral that I'm talking about happening.
Exactly.
All right, we'd better look at some tools then.
Yeah.
Let's
I know
let's
we've
have a
been
look
talking
at.
about that, so here we go.
So look about that. So Preflight, I would say the official Preflight tool is Flight Service. If you actually look it up in the FAA documents, when they are talking about official weather, they're talking about the service that they have contracted with to give us official information. That comes from National Weather Service and NOAA and others. But this group provides that. They compile it, they put it together, and it's really easy for us to get. We can look at it online if we want to do that, and we can also talk to somebody. And both are equally as official as the other. If you get a flight briefing from .com, that gets recorded, as does a verbal briefing over the telephone. And that's what really sort of people think about this idea of official. It's sort of being recorded somewhere, it's being noted somewhere. Somebody will no doubt right now be typing the question, what about ForeFlight? What about Garmin Pilot? Actually, if you look at the ForeFlight, I don't know about Garmin Pilot, but if you look at the manual there, it does say that they record the briefing that you've received, and it's recorded on your pad, but also in the ForeFlight cloud, and that does count as proof of receiving an official weather briefing. So that's interesting.
Yes, seems like it's like, again, it's maybe that lawyer thing where if something were to happen, you can prove that I did go and get this information. I made my attempt, my due diligence.
Yeah, I think so. Big picture, graphical tools are great. I love ADDS. I mean, that's it's just absolutely stunning. I mean, and the FAA and all of these weather organizations, they've done just a fantastic job using technology, using all the overlays, using the loops, making it easy for us to use. That's a fantastic one. We'll look at it in a minute. I also absolutely love the graphical area forecast. And I love it for two reasons. One, it's not textual, it's graphical.
I like pictures. Yes.
Pictures. Hey, and what's better than a picture? A moving picture.
Oh. So if a picture tells 1,000 words, what does a moving picture tell us?
I know.
1,000 every frame, probably. I don't know. But anyway, we'll have a quick look at that. Call a briefer. There's no reason why you shouldn't. You get all this information. Why not call a briefer as well? Have a discussion. The wonderful thing about a briefer is they are completely independent. They have no knowledge of what decisions you may be making. They're just giving you what they know and what they understand from that. So let's say they say driving off a cliff is not recommended.
I hope it wouldn't be. It's a Thelma and Louise briefing there.
So VFR not recommended? How many times do we hear that? Well, VFR is not recommended, and yet people still go. Again, these folks have nothing at stake in your flight. They're just giving it to you as it should be. So really listen to them and listen to what they say. Yeah. All right. Here's the Onflight, the flight service online portal. I'm not going to dig into too much of this one. I love it. I use it all the time. I particularly do my route planning here. I look at weather. I absolutely use it for filing. Around here, we've got the DC special flight rules area. You can set up your in and out gates and file it. And within that quick, it comes back with a text or email verification that your flight plan has been accepted. Now, you can also do this on other EFB-based tools and so on, I understand, but this one is the place. If you get that email or that text that says your flight plan verified and accepted, pretty sure that it's in the system.
And one thing I'll mention here is that Leidos, who is the contractor that runs this, I was in a meeting with them about 2 years ago, and they said too that if you're going online and checking things, especially on like a totally clear VFR day, and then you're calling because you're afraid it's not recorded, they're letting you know, please, that this does count. You don't need to necessarily call to make it count. This totally does, because you have you'll register for an account and everything else. So they just want to let you know that this thing is legal. It does count. You don't have to call them if you don't have any questions.
That's a good point. That remember in the days of DUAT, there was two services that would apply with that. You could get official weather, and you would have an account with them, and you could use other tools, and those other tools would link to your accounts. Well, it also works for flight service as well. Like the tools can link into your flight service account, so it gets recorded within flight service as well. So that's another good thing to do. So poll number 2 then, what do you use to get a weather briefing?
Let's go ahead and roll that.
Hey,
So
Steve.
do you just use, yeah?
I was just going to say, as we look at this, will you be covering, because there's a question being asked, and I think it's actually a good one, and I'll be honest with you, I don't remember if you're covering it, but how about in-flight weather?
Yeah, we'll look at that in a bit.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Just wanted to mention.
So we're on the ground.
Just a note on the poll here. I think there's just a misspelling there, but it's the weatherbrief.com is what you mean by that first one, right? It's not. I know it's misspelled there, but that's
no, that's Steve's own site.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's like Duat and Duats.
Yeah.
He went with weather.
Bateman weather.
That's my own one. It'll ask you for a subscription, so.
That's exactly
So yeah,
right.
1-800-WX brief. Thank you. Why didn't we notice that before? Or so do you use?
I don't know how we didn't notice that yesterday.
Yeah. Do you use both? Do you use other? I don't get briefings. So let's see what people are doing.
Let's see. We're looking at about 59% in.
So many good answers here. That's the hard part. Oh my goodness.
They're tough.
I do see one question here too. It says, can we call the briefers 1-800-WX brief for a pretend flight briefing? You know, just to check in, even if we don't have an N number to give them. And yes, you can let them know, especially if you're just trying to learn how to do it. If you're a student or something like that, totally fine to do that.
And it's really good to do these things with your instructor as well.
Yes.
As a student, you may not be able to write quickly enough, but the instructor knows what's coming and what order. It is a standard order. You can write the order down, have a little cheat sheet ready, so you can just fill in the details rather than to capture what is actually being told.
Now, this might be a dumb question because I actually don't know because I don't use it, but is there a 1-800-Weather Brief app?
I don't know. Good question.
Don't know.
I've stumped the
web
panel.
version.
I haven't thought about that.
The panel, which means I stumped us. That's not good.
So maybe
I can
there's an opportunity for somebody to make one there, Pablo. How about that?
I like what you're thinking.
So
I'm checking the App Store right now.
It'd be interesting to know what other people use. Given that, remember the whole thing with flight service, it is the official site, but there are other ones, as we said, that link to it. Interesting. I don't get briefings. I don't believe you.
Yeah, I don't either.
1%.
1%, yeah.
All right. Moving on then. So this is what ADDS looks like. We're getting a bit short of time, so I'm not actually going to go live with this at the moment, but you can dig into each one of these, and everyone comes up with a chart that looks like this. These charts are highly interactive and dynamic. If it's something to do with winds, for example, you can look at winds going out in time because it is a forecast, right? The winds and temperature aloft forecast. So anything with forecast, there's a slider which goes out in time. Anything that's an observation is a slider that goes back in time that you can then be looking at trends previously. Anything that has an altitude impact like winds, you have a slider there as well. So these are absolutely fantastic tools to look at. And it also gives you the well-known in-flight hazardous weather information, SIGMETs, AirMets, all of those sorts. And it's graphical.
It's an amazing. I did want to just mention too, for the folks that may not know, this is aviationweather.gov is how you get to this one, aviationweather.gov, or you can just search what Steve's got here in the picture. And the other part is, my favorite part of these, the legends, because every time you pick a new product, it gives you the legend that you don't have to memorize anything. It's amazing. Their help section's awesome.
And the pictures move.
I'll do it now then, so that
pictures move.
So that we see it.
Yeah, this is totally great tool. And
yeah.
Like I said, that part where it has a little help thing on every one of these, click on that because it'll even go into more detail about explaining what you're looking at. It's a great tool.
This is looking at TAFs, and you can hover over them or click over it and it gives you the information. But if you've forgotten how to use that wind bar, it tells you there, or the station model, these are really, really good things to do. So the graphical area forecast is another fantastic one. This again is a wonderful graphical tool. You can overlay all these different layers, and that to me is one of the most important innovations of these tools. You can correlate different views. You can look at something, you look at the prog charts, and then you can overlay radar on top of that, or you can look at, temperature dew point spreads and all of those sorts of things. So wonderful tool for that. So do you still want to go? Well, in that case, we're up there. Yeah, let's look at some in-flight tools then. So number 3, do you use ADSB in?
Roll that poll.
That, you've got a lot of tools available. ADSB certainly is one of the ones is one of the ones to think about using. Now you need to be, yeah.
I was just going to say, just in case people ask, what does ADSB stand for, and what is that for folks that may not know?
Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. It's that, remember that new transponder thing that we all had to comply with at the beginning of this year. And that to comply was that we are sending information out. There's another part to it, which is in. It allows us to receive the information that we and other people are putting out. Even better, it's processed. So we're getting processed information of sort of 2 main sources. One is flight information, which is relevant to us here, and we'll look at that in a minute. And the other is traffic information. Both of them are really important. So here, for example, do you use ADSB in for traffic? Use it for weather? Do you use it for both? Use it for neither? Now, the reason why I separated them out is whether the flight information system broadcast is only available on the lower frequency band, the UAT band. So if you have ADSB in on the upper band, the squitter band, then you won't be able to see it. But you can always get something like a portable device, such as a Stratus device that you could then beam into your iPad or Garmin Pilot or whatever. All right, how are we doing?
Doing
Well,
pretty good.
We can go ahead and look at that. We've got a big trend there.
Yeah.
Like.
And most people do, and even if you have only the 1098 ADSB out, a lot of people would use the portable for situational awareness. Of course, let's put that rider on there. These are some of the products that you can get. Bear in mind it can be up to 15 minutes old. One way of avoiding that would be to use a subscription type of product, Sirius XM, for example. Comes from satellites rather than ground stations. There's a different sort of type of latency involved, and there's different resolutions as well. But there's a subscription associated with it. I'm not saying which is better, which is worse. This you can get for the cost of equipment and just using your ADSB in. Sirius XM, you need some equipment and a subscription. Both are great tools.
And I'd say a big thing here too is this is not for you to go picking your way through weather like it's some kind of weather you've got, like a radar in your nose. Just always treat this as it is dated, and I don't mean old, but it's not like it's not right to the second, and so it's really meant to be helping you avoid large areas of weather to get away from those hazards.
So let's think about some of the important things there as we start bringing this a little bit to a close. The using your iPad for this sort of stuff or your Android. It was tempting just to say, well, what's most important? Well, which tool are you using? But I think you need to think about databases. You need to think about, is it charged and plugged in? Are you actually going to be able to use it? Is it connected to some sort of source of weather, GPS or your handheld, your portable device? Are you connected to Bluetooth to your transponder? Know how to use it. All of those things are pretty important. But wonderful tools.
And that can be a challenge at times, especially with the avionics in your panel. So
they can. So here's a great example. Here's a lovely flight, right? It looks really nice. What's the problem?
I'd go.
Yeah. You're going, right?
I'm going.
Pablo's off.
Yeah. Oh, we need a briefing for that one.
Let's turn the radar layer on though.
Oh.
Yeah, but the left side looks better than the right, so it's still good.
Yeah. And north looks better. Just go up there instead. Same thing happens with traffic. Have you ever been out when you're looking at your traffic screen on your EFB on your flight bag and say, oh, it's nice and quiet today. And then, let's make sure we turn on our traffic layer there.
And one thing too is to know also the fading part too, right? Because sometimes the weather can block other stuff out, so you need to know how to adjust that kind of stuff as well in there.
That's right. Yeah, you can take things off if it's getting in the way. Sometimes it's nice to look at traffic, but do you really need to know what's happening at 40,000 feet and 100 miles away? So,
but Steve, real quick, do you know, everything else we're always cautioned about times and could be, 15 minutes behind. how up to date is traffic? Do you know?
Whew, I don't have a number for you. In my experience, when I look at traffic and I look outside, it's there.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's accurate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
So some other tools, these are some of my faves. I know
Love it.
Pablo loves this one. Windy is a fantastic tool. The view on the left there is just a static view, but it's moving. It's showing you can forecast out. You can see at the bottom here that you can run the loop going out into the future. This is where the tropical storm that was coming in, look, and you can just see the winds and everything around it. Overlay that with pressure, overlay it with fronts, with the progs. It is a truly wonderful visualization tool, and I think that's
lightning.
And you were telling me it makes noises as well.
It makes noises with every lightning strike, and it shakes your device.
What could be better? The types of view I like as well, these things are called meteograms on the bottom of the right-hand picture. It's this very simple sort of graphical view, and you can get them on a number of different tools, but almost immediately with just a quick look, you can get an idea of what's going on, and you just scan left to right and sort of get the idea of forecast. Now, it is a forecast, it's not reality, right? It is a forecast. Another one I use is Pivotal. This goes into a lot of more sort of technical detail of some of the different weather models. And if you're really a weather nerd, then you need to go here at Weather Nerds, which again allows you to look at all these.
What was that again? If I wanted to go to Weather Nerds, what was that?
You need to be a weather nerd. So look down here, you can see these are all different model types. And this is just different ways of crunching the data as it comes in from various sources. One of the great sources we still use are radio sondes. We actually get absolute data as we go up through the atmosphere. And with those, you can be looking at skew-T, log-P type of charts and so on, which we'll leave for another time. There's a big view of a meteogram that I use as well. So at the end of the day, you, the pilot in command, must make the no-go decision. Siri's not going to do it for you. Even my patented go-ometer is not going to do it for you. And you will live or not with the consequences.
Very good. Well, I know that we've got, actually, I wonder if we've got about 8 minutes till the hour comes up. Should we go ahead and talk about just next episode and we just get to questions after that?
Yeah, so all right, before we get to the questions, let's do that. So next episode is Thursday, December 10th, 2020 for your favorite monthly webinar. I don't want anyone to forget that. 12 to 1 o'clock Eastern, more importantly, 11 o'clock Central, and that's for the flatlanders. And that is 7 ways an instrument rating will make you a better pilot. So this is basically building on today's episode, and tune in, it's going to be fascinating. So Steve Bateman, not Stephen Bateman, Dr. Bateman. Let's go to questions. So there's a lot of questions about maybe policies, procedures, or can I use this? I'd say in most cases we're going to give opinions and go somewhere to look if we don't know, because those things, they can change. All right, so let me go with some of the questions I have here. Oh, that's a funny one. So James just said magic 8-ball. I don't think that's allowed. It's not a verified.
If it's an official one, though, maybe an official magic 8-ball. It might be all right.
Yeah, from the FAA, that'd be something.
Is that something to do with snooker?
Yes. Yes. Okay, so first question is not relating to weather at all, but someone was fascinated by your flying club statement when you started, Steve. And they'd like to know if there's a listing of the flying clubs AOPA has helped start.
Well,
yes.
As it happens, yes. So it's even better than that. We have a listing of flying clubs in the nation. If you look on the AOPA Flying Club's website, you'll see the Flying Club Finder. It's a map-based tool. You can put in your state or a zip code or an airport ID, and it pops up with all the flying clubs on a map, and you can click on those and find information about it. You can also look at them state by state in a list format.
Is there anything that shows which clubs were actually started or helped started by AOPA and you yourself?
Graphically, no, we don't differentiate those. We form things called network flying clubs, and we certainly like the clubs that we form that comply to certain standards and best practices. They become members of the network, but other clubs are most welcome as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. So also early on, you talked about your the first slide, I believe it was, so really early on, about the IFR or the incident, the accident that you first mentioned. And I think we did cover it, but the question was this pilot IFR rated? Did he have a flight plan? And were there departure procedures for the airport? So we're getting into this pilot's head, but do you know if any of those things are there? I know they're in the official report probably, but do you happen to know any of those offhand?
No, this was just something I saw in a press from a newspaper, and it caught my eye as it was very timely in what we were talking about. I know it happened from a private field in North Dakota, but that's all the information I have. I don't have any other specifics.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here's another one. Do we know, and these get kind of tough because we're talking about individual programs and stuff. So I'll say in general, they refer to windy, but do they both show cloud to cloud and cloud to ground lightning? Do we know this?
I don't.
Okay. All right. I have to ask, I mean, maybe we know. We got some pretty smart people on this show. So.
Absolutely, and they're smart enough to look up the instruction manual. That's without doubt.
Yeah, let me Google that for you. I do it often. Okay. So one of the things that was asked earlier was about the app for 1-800-weather, and many people are saying there is an Android app. They haven't really delineated between iOS and no one has said iOS. They've all said there is at least an Android app. So.
And I saw some comments too that were saying that they were looking, and I went on myself and looked on the Apple App Store, and I didn't see anything on there. So I don't think there is one for iOS, at least not that's easily findable.
And Steve, can we go back to weather reports in the air, please? One would be, would you recommend it? 2, how do you do it? And 3, what do you do with that info?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the context.
So the weather report in the air, you've done everything on the ground, you've looked at everything you're going to. Would you recommend checking in air? Why would you check in the air?
Oh, well, of course, yeah, particularly again when you use your eyeball and you're seeing that things are changing. And there are many different ways you can do that. I'm going into a lot more detail of all of this topic in a webinar I'll be putting together in the near future. And it goes into a lot more detail about the types of things you can do when in the air. I mean, an obvious one is to make sure that you listen to all the ATIS and AWOS and ASOS along your route. That's telling you what's happening, which is really good. Getting an idea of PIREPs, calling up flight service, and know how to call up flight service, right? A lot of people say, well, I'd love to call up flight service in the air. How do I do that? So you need to know how to be able to call up flight service, how to contact ATC. If you're flying VFR, you're not on flight following, you're not talking to anybody, and you have a need or a desire to chat with ATC, how do you find the closest frequencies? A lot of this information can be found on either the VFR charts. The ATC frequencies can certainly be found with changeover points on the IFR charts. And there's a lot of information in the CSUP, in the chart supplement. So absolutely, if you don't know what the frequencies are, you can just dial up 122.2, and generally you'll be able to call something radio. And if you don't know what radio it is, don't worry, just say radio, or just
right.
You don't know which one it is. Just talk to them, they'll come back with who they are, and they'll be able to give you frequencies. They'll also be able to give you weather updates. And when you've got that person, always give a PIREP. When you look at one of the things we'll do in the webinar, we'll look live at some of these weather apps that show PIREPs, and it's horrifying to see how few there are, and most of them are at like 35,000 feet, right?
Yes.
That's a problem, yeah.
Yeah. So
and one thing, and I was just going to add into those two things with the PIREPs, I agree, and with talking to flight service, I have never called them and had them be mean or short. They are always incredibly helpful. So, and even when it comes to a PIREP, they're glad to take it, and they will literally walk you through it. So you don't need to memorize the format. You don't need to memorize the order. They will ask you, what's the temperature? What's this? You know, the biggest thing you probably need to know is just where you are. If you can say where you are, then the rest of it, they will help you pull all that out.
And also one of the cool things is when you look at, like in your screenshot there, Steve, about ForeFlight and picking, make sure that you've got those things selected. one of the things to make that you can actually see PIREPs displayed on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It'll show you when there's a PIREP and where it's at, which
Yeah.
is cool.
Yeah.
But like you said, a lot of the time for us GAers at the lower altitudes, you click on it, it'll say, 30,000 feet, we're experiencing some icing. Like, okay, that's great.
So there's my challenge. If I leave with anything, my challenge is to always give a PIREP for every leg of every flight.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Cool.
Someone also said you can also mention that avnwx.com is always being updated and improved. I've never used that. Have any of you guys used it?
Nope.
I'll take that as a no. Okay. The cloud to cloud, that was in there. Okay. PIREPs. People say that they're good for all situations. And so they just disagreed that my statement about, for GA pilots, they're usually not a lot of help. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that, but
I think that, yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that you just meant that oftentimes we get these PIREPs, they're from airlines or airliners
yeah.
or whatever, or jets, and so they're way above us, and we're maybe flying at 3,000, 5,000 feet, and they're at 30. It doesn't really apply. And you're right, there is it's kind of a scarcity of PIREPs from GA, and I don't, I'm almost wondering what it is. Is it whether people are afraid to do it, which is what I was trying to let people know, that it's really easy to do? Is it just they feel like it's hard to do, which is not, I don't know, but it's more about, like what Steve said. I like Steve's goal of take a point when you're on a cross country and call in and just give them, give a PIREP. Sometimes if ATC is not busy, sometimes they will take it. You can ask if they're not busy. If they are busy, they're not going to have time to do that, but you can always try that.
But it's easy enough to call up flight service, and particularly if you're asking for something, why not give something back?
Exactly. So good idea.
Yeah.
And useful too.
Yeah, and that's really about it. I mean, a lot of the other ones are ADBS out or making statements about they have it or they don't. So that's really, let's see, traffic, good accident. Yeah, that's about it. This is good. We're right on time. Hopefully we've kept everybody along the way. Those were the questions. Like I said, most of the other ones were statements based on here's what I do or here's what I like. So again, I think great job this week, this month, guys. Steve Bateman, thank you so much.
Welcome. Thanks,
Steve.
Good job. Of Flying Clubs. Chris, Steven, great month again. Remember, our next episode is Thursday, December 10th. We were thinking about having a Christmas episode, but we're not going to do that because we're too new.
Maybe we can. Maybe for the show, we could do that. Instrument ratings like a present that gives constantly. So it's a Christmas. It's the 12 days of instrument ratings.
That's right. Yeah. And actually, I was responding to someone who said that I was laughing about the dead pilot. In fact, I wasn't. So I'd like to point that out right now. I was laughing at the comment because it was so long ago in our presentation. I would never do that. That would be absolutely ridiculous of me to do. And anyone who thinks I was doing that, come on, give me a break. We like to have fun here. I was referring to the actual statement, not the incident. So, but they did make a comment, which was funny, that said it's just youthful enthusiasm. So I'll take that right to the bank because youthful is not moi. Just went to 49 last week. So
not as young as you think. Not as young as you think.
As you think. Although it is youthful enthusiasm in the sense of I like to laugh. So. Okay, guys, thank you very much. And we're 12:03. So everyone that was watching, we appreciate you being with us for the full time. So we will see you next month. With that, Stephen, take us away.
All righty.
Thank you, sir.